All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name's Brent. You're listening to the LJS podcast, episode number 11. And today we're going to be talking about 4 ingredients for becoming a better jazz musician. Man, we are killing it on this show. Last week we had internationally renowned jazz guitarist from Los Angeles, Bruce Foreman. Man, if you haven't checked out that episode, that's the last episode, episode number 10. You got to go check that out. That was such a great conversation with Bruce. We talked about all sorts of things, jazz then and jazz now, some tips about practicing. I mean, a lot of stuff. It was a great conversation. Very lucky to be able to have him on the show. Check out that episode if you haven't. And I don't want to give away anything right now, any names or anything, but I'm just going to let you know we have some other pretty big guests in store for this show. We have had a lot of guests so far, but we're starting to edge into that realm of I guess you could call them jazz celebrities. So stay tuned to listening to the show. There's a lot of exciting things coming up. But today I'm just riding solo. We're gonna take a little break from having some guests. I'm just gonna ride solo today. But before we get started, I just want to say all of the music on the show today is by Camden Hughes, actually the founder of this website, the founder of LearnJazzStandards.com, and this is off of his latest album, Introspective. So if you like the music, you want to check it out, maybe you want to buy the album, go to his website, CamdenHughes.com/store, and that's where you can find that album. Great album. So go check that out. And one other thing before we get started, if you get some value in today's show, consider adding value back. This show is 100% funded by listeners like you. It's how we produce this podcast. So if you get some value out of today, there's a support button below the player if you're on the website. If you're not on the website, you can go to learnjazzstandards.com/support. You can leave us a one-time donation or a monthly donation to help support the future podcasts, episodes of this show. We really greatly appreciate your support. All right, now today's episode is 4 ingredients to becoming a better jazz musician. And these are really things that, for me, have kind of defined my jazz journey and how I've come to become a better jazz player and continue to become a better jazz player. And so I really wanted to share these with you today because I really believe that these are incredibly important to becoming a better jazz musician and reaching your musical goals. And some of these might be obvious, some of them might not be obvious to you. And regardless, I think they're all incredibly important. So I'm kind of sharing my experience with you and a lot of my peers' experience and what a lot of my mentors and teachers have shared with me as well. So I think you're going to get some value out of this today. Let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so the first ingredient for becoming a better jazz musician is one that might seem a little obvious to you, but it's one that I think is incredibly important. In fact, it's kind of like if you don't have this, everything else is probably not going to work out so well for you in your jazz playing. So the first one is you have to have passion. You have to have passion for listening to jazz, for playing jazz. You have to have this inner passion, this inner desire to improve, this inner desire to just enjoy listening to the music. You have to be a jazz geek, okay? I call it, you have to be a geek because jazz is it's not necessarily the in thing, It's not like pop culture music. In the last podcast, I was talking to Bruce Foreman, and he was talking about how a lot of, jazz students have this kind of illusion that, we were talking about the Village Vanguard here in New York City where I live, and, how you're listening to, that famous Bill Evans trio recording, and you're picturing in your head a huge room full of people, but no, I mean, the reality is there probably wasn't that many people actually in the room for that recording session. The Village Vanguard's not even that big. So, we sometimes think that these players are so grand and these situations are so grand. Bruce was talking about going to see Art Blakey in San Francisco, when he was younger, and how sometimes there wouldn't even be that many people in the crowd. And the thing is, you need to have passion about jazz because you just have to be a fan, not because it's the in thing or it's the cool thing or because it's popular music, because it's not necessarily any of those things in society. It's an awesome music. It's a great music, and I love it. I hope you love it, but it's not necessarily something where it's easy to be a jazz musician or it's the most popular thing. So you have to be a jazz geek. You got to love jazz. You got to just love to listen to it. I know a lot of my friends who weren't into jazz when I was, younger and I was just really listening to jazz. They'd all be really confused. Like, man, why are you sitting in your practice room for hours? Why don't you come go hang out with us? I'm like, no, man, I really need to practice today. I need to work on this stuff. I'd want to turn on some jazz in the car, and everybody's like, what are you listening to? And that's fine. Everybody has their preferences, but I love jazz. I like jazz. I love improvisation. I like the history of the music. I like the style. I like the swing. I like jazz now. I like the evolution of jazz. I just like jazz, and I'm a big jazz geek. I'm a big nerd, and I'm passionate about jazz. That's why I'm talking about jazz on a podcast. Like, who else does this? Who else spends their time, recording a podcast just talking about jazz? But that's what you need. You need passion. If you don't have passion, it's going to be very hard for you to want to sit down and face the challenges that jazz brings to the table. It's not the easiest music to play. It's harmonically complex. It takes a certain level of virtuosity at times to play as an improviser. So it's a kind of music, it really demands your attention. It really demands that you work hard at it. To become better. Nothing comes easily. So it's something that you need to have passion for. If you don't have passion, you're not going to get very far. You're going to just kind of move forward slowly and then realize it's a little too challenging. And then, so if you're the kind of person that's like, yeah, I'd like to play a little bit of jazz. I'd like to, get into it. That's totally great. That's totally fine. And you play other styles and that's great. And you should play other styles. It's amazing. But if you're kind of just sort of like wanting to half-ass it a little bit, you're only going to get so far. You're really only going to get so far. And that's the problem with jazz. It kind of demands a lot out of you. It kind of basically is a little greedy. It wants your attention because if you want to become a good jazz player, you have to be dedicated to it. You have to have passion. So the first one is really simple. Not anything groundbreaking, not anything like you probably haven't heard before about anything in life, but it's just you got to have passion for playing jazz. It's not the most popular thing in the world. It's not the easiest thing to do in the world, not the easiest kind of music to play. So you have to have passion. And if you don't have passion, you're kind of just going to peter out eventually. It's not going to last very long. So that's the first ingredient to becoming a better jazz musician. Just simply have passion. And in the next several ingredients I'm going to talk about, go a little bit more into what I would say is, really going to drive you for it. But to start, passion is super important. All right, so the second ingredient for becoming a better jazz musician is one that I really think is important for all serious jazz musicians to try to get, and that is to have a mentor. And let me make a distinction really quick between, a teacher and a mentor, because I really do think there's kind of a difference. A teacher could just be, which everybody should have. Everybody should have a teacher for music or for jazz, whatever it is. make sure you have a teacher, you're studying with somebody. But, a teacher could be just someone you show up to the lesson, you hand them $50, $80, whatever it might be they're asking for. They teach you something new and they send you on your way, and then they let the next student into the room. And, they don't really necessarily have any interest in your future. They're just, your local teacher telling you what to do. And that's great. That's fine, like I said. But the difference between a teacher and a mentor is someone who really kind of takes you under his or her wing and kind of shows you the future, where you need to go, and actually cares, and that's not always easy to find. But a mentor almost lets you be his or her disciple a little bit. You can kind of follow behind them, go to their gigs. They check in with you. They're not just teaching you new material. They're actually showing you a path to go towards. And that's what a mentor is. And for me, having a mentor, it was a life-changing thing, a life-changing experience. And I don't say that lightly. A lot of people say, "Oh, I went to this show and it was life-changing." Well, it could have been, it may or may not been. I'm not sure. I can't judge that. But for me, this is for real. It was life-changing. And just to give you the quick story is when I think it was my senior year of high school. There was an art school that was opening up in my town. I'm originally from Boise, Idaho. There's not a lot of, there's some music going on over there. There's really not a lot of jazz. It's a small town. And there was a teacher, and he had a small group of students that he was teaching, and that was kind of like the jazz crowd. That was like, he was kind of fostering this community, and he opened up this art school my senior year. So I got a scholarship to go to this art school. I would go to my public school in the morning and go to this art school in the afternoon. And during the day, I would do jazz combos, and I would practice for a couple hours, and my teacher would come in and help me and show me what to do. We would have master classes. We even had a jam session at a local coffee shop in the middle of the week. I mean, it was amazing, I'm completely feel blessed and lucky to have had that experience. But he was really my mentor. And what happened is, at the end of that senior year of high school, I didn't really have quite enough money to go to the schools I wanted to go to. I had applied to and made it into a bunch of the music institutions, but at the end of the day, even a half scholarship wasn't going to cut it for me. I couldn't afford it, and I didn't really know what to do. And I was telling my teacher this, and then one day he just comes into my practice room, and he said to me, "Hey Brent, I have an idea. How about you just take the whole year off, save up money teaching lessons and doing some gigs for school, and you just study with me for the whole year. I'll set up a program for you. You come check in with me every week. You play this gig every week. You go to this jam session every week, and I'll tell you what to do, and we'll get you a better scholarship. We'll get you into school." And that's what I did for a whole year. I literally practiced 5 or 6 hours a day. I checked in with him every single week to make sure I got everything done he needed. And that was a real mentorship, and that changed my life. Now, I completely understand that not everybody is going to be able to find a mentor like that. And that's okay. But what I want you to do is try to make a goal of finding someone in the town or city you live in that you really admire, and start by just taking some lessons, and then, try to get to know them and go to their gigs and just show up and be present, and, try to foster a relationship. And because if you can get a mentor, it's so valuable. I mean, at least have a teacher, but if you can get someone to actually care about your future and lead you in the right direction, even better, even better. So try to make this relationship, and try to just be involved. Like, just be a fan of whoever you like. If you like someone's music in your city or town, just try to be around and try to be involved, and try to, go to jam sessions that they're at, go to their gigs and take lessons from them. And you can find a lot of value if they actually start taking you under their wing a little bit and saying, "Hey, do this, do that, let me help you with this." That can be really important, and I understand it's not easy for everybody. Some people come from a town that doesn't have a lot of musicians around, and that's okay. I'm a little spoiled. I live in New York City. I have a lot of jazz teachers that I can go to, but don't let your situation govern your chances of having a mentorship experience. Just find someone that you like to listen to, or that you like their music, that you respect them in your living situation, and try to befriend them. Try to enter into a teacher-student relationship with them. It can be very important. So, the second ingredient, make an effort to have a mentor. All right, the third ingredient for becoming a better jazz musician is another really important one, I think, that is essential to the life of a jazz musician, and that's be a part of a community. Be a part of a jazz community. Just think about, the friends that you have. You're friends with them because you have something in common with them. That's just how life works. We associate ourselves with people that have some liked interests, some same interests as we do. And that's the same with jazz. I mean, you have to have a group of people that you go and play with, that you can talk jazz with. Having community is essential to any aspect, any element to our life, and it goes for the same for jazz. You have to have a community. So how do you get a part of a jazz community? Well, you just go to where the jazz musicians are. That's at gigs, that's at jam sessions. So if you're basically right now starting at square one, you love playing jazz, you love listening to jazz, and you're really trying to get into the scene, well, you got to go find the scene. Go find where the musicians are at. So if there's a local jam session in your city, that's where you should be showing up. Show up those jam sessions, make connections with people there. Try to make friends. That's obviously an important thing, being part of a community. And go to people's gigs, kind of the same as I said, go to a mentor's gig. Well, go to other people's gigs that you know, and maybe peers, and just go check out the scene, be a part of the scene. So having a jazz community is super important, just being present. For some, everybody's in a different walk of life. You might be a student going to college, or you're in high school. We have a lot of different age levels and skill levels that listen to this podcast, that learn jazz standards. So I can't be sure of who you are, but if you're a student, well, I mean, college and high school is an easy place to make friends. It's an easy place to find like-minded people that play music, that might like jazz. So you should foster those relationships in that environment. I know going to college for jazz, I made a lot of jazz friends. I mean, most of my friends now are jazz musicians. So foster those relationships and always be playing with them. Play with them. Now, if you're in a different situation altogether, maybe you're a little bit older and you're a hobbyist, and maybe you work another job, which is pretty normal, then go out and try to find that scene. Go out to that jam session. Go out to those gigs and try to foster that community and make yourself a part of it. I did have a lesson with a student, a Skype lesson, and I remember the guy telling me that he just had a problem finding the scene in his town because there really wasn't much of a scene at all. He was kind of alone out there. And what I would say to that is, if you can't find a community where you're at, try to make the community. There's always somebody who's going to want to play music with you, who's going to want to play jazz. Just try to find one other person, which was a big, valuable thing for me, is just, having friends around and being like, hey, do you want to go jam some tunes right now? Okay, we go play for a couple hours together. And I would do that with multiple different people, multiple different kinds of instruments. It's incredibly helpful. I mean, just playing is is a great way to learn. I mean, you can't just sit in your practice room all the time. So you need to get out and play. So just try to find one other person, maybe two other people. Maybe start your own jam session and just see if you can get some people to show up. You can make an effort to be the community. If you can't find the community, make the community in your town or your city. So being a part of a jazz community is super important because you need to play. You need to be always playing with other musicians. That's the spirit of this music. And you need to be networking with other musicians. That's just, I mean, I don't know what to say, guys. That's just the most important thing, is just playing with other musicians. And that's the kind of music this music is. It's a social music. So go out and be a part of a jazz community. If you can't find the community, make the community yourself. And that's incredibly important. And that kind of leads me into our next and our last ingredient. Our last ingredient, it kind of tags off of this idea of being a part of a jazz community, of fostering that community and playing a lot with other musicians. And that is that you need to play gigs. I think playing gigs is definitely the best way to improve, because it kind of puts everything you've practiced in the practice room, and it puts, just even jam sessions with other people into a different context. It puts us into this place where you're actually doing a job and you're playing for other people and you're hired for a purpose, and it puts some applied pressure on you, whether it's a background gig or you're actually playing a feature show for people. It puts you in a totally different place in your musicianship, where you're going to be forced to try to play at your best and forget everything that you've been working on in the practice room and just play. So that's incredibly important as a developing jazz musician. It doesn't matter if you want to play professionally or if you just want to play casually. You need to find gigs to play, and that kind of starts with being a part of that community, making some connections, and then going out and playing gigs, whether you found the gig yourself, whether someone else in your jazz community has the gig and they hired you on to play. It doesn't really matter. It's just that you need to make an effort to be playing gigs. It's so important. And just being able to play a lot. I had, my favorite gigs actually are background music gigs, because they're the gigs that I get to practice a lot on. I remember having a gig with another guitar player. I'm a guitar player, and I had actually a gig with another guitar player. So I was just playing duo, and we played for 5 months at this one little restaurant in Midtown, New York. And we would play actually twice a week, and we would play for 3 hours, so 6 hours a week. And we would just play a bunch of tunes. And sometimes we would say, hey, let's try to have this song learned for next time, or this song learned for next time. We'd show up the next week and we'd have some more songs to work on and shed. And it's fine because it's kind of a low pressure thing. People aren't judging you, not that they are anyways, but they're just eating their dinner. And those are great gigs. I mean, I've learned so much from gigs like that. I currently have a brunch gig every Saturday that I play with a bass player. We've been doing it for about 2.5 years now, and it's kind of the same thing. Sometimes we bring in some original tunes that we want to play together and, test out our stuff. And a lot of it is just playing jazz standards and just getting the luxury of just practicing those, but also getting paid for it. So it's a great thing to have. You need to have gigs. I mean, it's almost kind of like one of those no-brainer things. Like, of course you need to play live. Of course you need to play gigs. I mean, a lot of people get excited, not even just about jazz, about music in general, is the prospect of actually playing in front of people, playing in front of an audience. So having gigs is incredibly important to developing your musicianship. It's the best practice you can probably do is just put what you've learned into actual action. And so I encourage you, if you don't have any gigs right now, first of all, get involved in the community, your jazz community, or create your jazz community. and then go either find gigs or make relationships with people that do have gigs, so that you can play. And again, if there's no gigs in your town, make a gig. You can make something happen. Make sure you're getting paid for it. I have this article on the blog on Learn Jazz Standards. What is it called? 3 reasons why you should stop playing gigs for free. And that's something I strongly believe in. That's a totally different conversation for another time. But make sure you're getting paid something. It's important to the musical economy that you're getting paid. And it also makes a difference. If you're just playing a gig for free, you might as well just be doing a jam session. So, make sure you're getting paid for your gig, but make sure you're playing gigs. So I would say the 4th ingredient for becoming a better jazz musician is to play gigs. So to sum it up, all the ingredients, you got to have passion. You got to have passion for playing jazz. It's not popular. It's not easy. So you just got to love it. Be a jazz geek. Let yourself be a jazz geek. Find a mentor. Having a mentor is incredibly important. They're going to lead you in the right direction. They're actually going to care about your music, and you're going to get so much out of it. So try to find that relationship. Be a part of your jazz community was the 3rd ingredient. Just find the people that love jazz, make friends with them, go to the jam sessions, go to their gigs, just be a part of the community. And if you don't have that community in your town, try to create it. And then lastly, play gigs. You got to put your practicing into action. You got to play the music, and that's what's going to drive you forward, is playing these gigs. So these are 4 ingredients for becoming a better jazz musician. All right, and that's all for our show today. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. And if you're on the website right now and you have anything else to add, leave a comment in our comment section below. These are just my experiences. These are the things that I find have been really helpful in my jazz journey thus far. But this is a community. I want to hear from you. What helps you become a better jazz musician? What has been important for you in your jazz journey? So feel free to leave us a comment below. And again, all the music today was by Camden Hughes, his album Introspective. Go to camdenhughes.com/store if you want to check out his music. And remember, if you got some value out of today's show, consider adding value back. Leave us a donation, a one-time or monthly donation. Click the support button below if you are on the website, or if you're not on the website, go to learnjazzstandards.com/support and help us continue to produce this show. All right, so we're going to be coming out with episode number 12 next week, and we'll see you then.